Imagine you're just an ordinary person, someone with a family, dreams, and a basic sense of right and wrong. Now picture yourself standing in a room where you're told to press a button that delivers electric shocks to a stranger tied to a chair. A man in a lab coat assures you it's just an experiment. The stranger screams in pain, but the authority figure insists you continue. You hesitate, but most people in this real-life psychological study, the infamous Milgram experiment, didn't. Over 65% obeyed, continuing to the highest voltage. These weren't heartless monsters. They were teachers, clerks, parents, regular people. What if the same obedience that led people to press a button in a lab also led others to pull a trigger in war, to enforce unjust laws, or to stay silent in the face of cruelty? The truth is disturbing. Good people can become monsters, not in one big leap, but through a slow psychological transformation that most never even notice. This process, what we might call the corruption cycle, plays out in 5 predictable stages. First is moral erosion, where small compromises like lies or betrayals chip away at our values. These actions seem harmless at first, but each one lowers our resistance to the next, until things we once found unthinkable begin to feel normal. Second is obedience to authority, a powerful force that overrides our moral compass. Milgram's study and history itself, from Nazi soldiers to corporate scandals, show how people commit horrifying acts simply because someone in charge told them to. The third stage is group identity, the tribal instinct that divides the world into us and them. This creates distance, then dehumanization, making it easier to justify cruelty against those outside the group. The fourth is self-justification, the mind's way of protecting our self-image. We tell ourselves stories like, "I had no choice," or "I did it for the greater good," allowing us to commit or support unethical actions while still believing we're good people. The final and most dangerous stage is dehumanization, the point of no return. Once we stop seeing others as human, morality no longer applies. This has fueled genocides, systemic injustice, and even online hate. The scariest part? This transformation happens slowly. It starts with a tiny step, keeping quiet about wrongdoing, bending rules, or obeying an order without question. Over time, the brain adapts, guilt fades, and each step into darkness feels more acceptable. This pattern has repeated throughout history, in war crimes, government atrocities, and everyday lives. Psychology proves that under the right pressure, anyone, even someone like you, can fall into this trap. The Milgram experiment wasn't just about shocking a stranger. It was a mirror reflecting how deeply social conditioning influences us. We're taught from childhood to obey teachers, bosses, police, and authority figures. That conditioning makes it difficult to say no, even when something feels wrong. The Stanford prison experiment showed this too. College students playing the role of prison guards quickly became abusive, not because they were evil, but because they internalized their roles and authority. It didn't take long for cruelty to emerge. The experiment had to be shut down early. These aren't just experiments. They explain real-world horrors. The Holocaust, the My Lai massacre, and even modern-day corporate fraud weren't committed by psychopaths alone. Often they were carried out by regular people who stopped questioning orders and started justifying their actions. The problem is not just that people obey bad commands. It's that they believe they're not the kind of people who would. "I would never do that," they say. But history shows that's exactly the kind of person most victims and perpetrators once were. The only way to resist is through moral awareness, asking yourself, would I do this if no one told me to? Evil doesn't always wear a villain's face. Often it hides behind a desk, a uniform, a job title, or a social media post. It seeps in slowly, quietly, through ordinary people making ordinary choices. The danger isn't just in others, it's in all of us. Recognizing this is not just about understanding history, it's about protecting our future. Because the moment you think, "I would never become that," is the moment you become most vulnerable. What does it mean to be a good person in moments when morality is tested? If history were to judge our choices today, how would they be remembered? Blind obedience is not loyalty, it is surrender. And this surrender doesn't just come from authority figures, but from something deeper, the need to belong. Humans are wired to seek connection, to find identity in groups, from families and friendships to political parties and nations. But this instinct has a dark side. The moment we divide the world into us and them, morality begins to fade. Compassion is reserved only for those in our group, and those outside it become less than human. This is how ordinary people become capable of extraordinary cruelty. Psychologists have shown how easily people favor their group, even if that group is randomly assigned. And if such loyalty emerges from something as arbitrary as a coin flip, imagine the power of real identities like race, religion, or nationality. That's why history's worst atrocities, from the Holocaust to the Rwandan genocide, begin not with violence, but with a shift in perception. The enemy is no longer seen as human. Language strips away humanity, calling people rats, cockroaches, or savages. Once that line is crossed, empathy disappears and anything becomes justifiable. What's most disturbing is that these horrors are rarely committed by monsters. They're committed by normal people who believe they're doing the right thing. Propaganda fuels this belief. It turns neighbors into enemies and convinces people that cruelty is necessary. Social media reflects this same cycle today. Political opponents are treated not as people with different ideas, but as threats, traitors, or evil. Outrage is rewarded, and dehumanization spreads. Once someone is labeled the enemy, empathy vanishes, and moral boundaries collapse. This isn't just about the past. It's happening now, every day. So, how do we stop it? First, recognize the trap. Anytime you start seeing an entire group as bad, pause and ask who benefits from this division. Look for individuals, not labels. No group is entirely one thing. Engage with people, not stereotypes. Resist propaganda, whether it comes from politicians, media, or your social circle. History proves that when we stop seeing others as human, we are capable of anything. No one believes they are the villain. Even those who commit atrocities often believe they are protecting something good. This is the power of self-justification. When our actions contradict our morals, the brain rewrites the story so we can keep seeing ourselves as good. We do this in everyday life, justifying lies, cruelty, or selfishness. The more we justify, the easier it becomes. Over time, what once felt wrong starts to feel normal. Corrupt leaders, war criminals, and ordinary people alike convince themselves they are still righteous. This is how small compromises become great evils. That's why we must confront discomfort, not avoid it. If you feel the need to justify something, ask yourself honestly, am I making excuses? Hold yourself accountable, even for small actions. Surround yourself with people who challenge your beliefs. Avoid echo chambers and seek out different perspectives. Because the road to becoming a monster does not begin with cruelty. It begins with excuses. Dehumanization is the final and most dangerous stage in this process. The human brain has a powerful capacity for empathy, but only when we see others as human. If that switch is flipped, empathy disappears. History shows us this again and again, from Nazi Germany to Rwanda to the horrors of slavery. But today, the same patterns persist. In war, soldiers are taught to call people targets. Online, hate thrives behind anonymity. The result is the same. People begin to seem less real, and cruelty becomes easy. Once someone commits their first act of dehumanization, the next becomes easier. So how do we stop this? With conscious effort. Be alert to dehumanizing language. When you hear people described as animals, vermin, or evil, something is wrong. Challenge these narratives. See individuals, not groups. Refuse to participate in online hate. Empathy is a choice, and it must be made daily. But what if all of these forces, obedience, tribalism, self-justification, and dehumanization, aren't just flaws, but survival instincts? The truth is, they evolved to protect us. Obeying leaders increased our chances of survival. Joining groups gave us safety. Seeing enemies as less than human made it easier to fight them. These instincts helped our ancestors survive in a dangerous world. But today, they can be hijacked. The same forces that once kept us safe now threaten to destroy us. If the capacity for evil is built into all of us, is resistance even possible? Yes, but only with radical self-awareness. The moment you think, I would never do that, you become vulnerable. Morality requires constant reflection. Every time you justify something unethical or demonize others, Ask yourself, am I being manipulated by my own instincts? Practice radical empathy. Try to understand those you fear or disagree with, and above all, speak up. Silence allows evil to grow. Being a good person isn't enough. You have to act when it matters. So ask yourself now, what will you do differently? Because this isn't just about history. It's about you. The forces that shape the world's darkest moments are still shaping us. The only question is, will you be aware enough to resist them?